Rodgers don't get to sit with the big boys at the big boy table. If you're talking Aaron Rodgers, there is no more important voice to hear than the voice to Dave Helman's.
We're taking it over here. Right?
That's the most important voice you can hear on national television whenever discussing Aaron Rodgers. You want a Super Bowl, James Jones, with Aaron Rodgers. It's always an honor and a treat to listen to your insight and intellect when talking about Rodgers. Viewers, you are in for a treat. Relax, turn your volumes up. And, James, I will ask you first. Do you agree with Mark Schlereth that Rodgers has to sit at the kiddie table?
Oh, man, some people crazy, man. Some people, I don't know if some people really watched Aaron Rodgers. But, no, I think he's tripping.
Okay.
Is what I really do think. Yes, Aaron Rodgers has one Super Bowl ring. And if you're just going strictly off of Super Bowl rings and you're saying multiple Super Bowl rings and you're telling me the Eli Mannings and people like that can sit at the table and Aaron Rodgers can't, you're absolutely crazy. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game. From winning, from talent, from everything. When people talk about Aaron Rodgers, they talk about him just because he only has one Super Bowl appearance. Like the other stuff he accomplished don't matter.
That part.
Like for me, like the man is a 4-time MVP, a Super Bowl MVP. Like, what are we talking about? And then when you go to the talent of the quarterback spot, like for me, I look at this quarterback stuff different. Yes, Super Bowls matter, but it's not the only thing that matters to me. Because I believe Dan Marino should be at that table too. Because I don't think none of them quarterbacks is like Dan neither, and Dan don't have a Super Bowl ring. I go off of the talent of the quarterback, and I don't forget what you accomplished. And it might not necessarily be all Super Bowls, but the other things you accomplished. Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback, in my humble opinion, especially when you talk about talent and the overall position of the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is absolutely special, and he's sitting at them table with them boys. And to be honest with you, if he gets 2 rings, they should be at another table. It should be Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, because when you put talent on top of skill and on top of winning, Joe Montana ain't Aaron Rodgers, man. I love Joe Montana. I grew up in the Bay Area. He's not Joe Montana. Now we talking about the Patties, we talking about the Aarons, we talking about the Bradys. Other than that, I don't think a lot of those dudes, especially when you put the whole package together, can sit at the table with Aaron Rodgers. And I understand everybody want to go straight to the Super Bowl rings. Man, I understand that. But don't forget what Aaron Rodgers has done for this game and the things he's accomplished, man, even if it's only one Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with you. Now, what's interesting is if the table is just a 4-top like in L.A. and, you know, you got to get a reservation and all there is 4 people sitting at the high top because you couldn't actually get the 7 p.m. reservation in the booth in the corner section, I get it. Because if it's a high top and it's 4 people, I see Peyton, I see Montana, I see Brady, I see Mahomes. Multiple Super Bowls and multiple MVPs. So I'm with James Jones on that. It's not exclusively about Super Bowls. I want to see individual accolades and I want to see collective talent. If it's just a 4-top, it's those 4. I won't argue with you. That's fine. But what Schlereth said was Thanksgiving.
I'm glad you said that, because I was like, we're not talking about a 4-top
He said Thanksgiving.
Who has 4 people at Thanksgiving?
Exactly right. And at Thanksgiving in the Acho household, we do have the adults table, which can seat about 8. Yeah. And there is that second living room, which seats about 12 to 14. Kids is running around. Yeah. The young adults are sitting at. So I understand the concept of a big table and a kiddie table. Aaron Rodgers is sitting at most any and every table in the National Football League because of his talent. And the dilemma when you try to have an unnuanced conversation about Rodgers is you start bringing up Super Bowls exclusively. But then the problem is you have to enter in guys like Eli Manning, who have more Super Bowls than Rodgers. Ben Roethlisberger, who has more Super Bowls than Rodgers. Troy Aikman, who has more Super Bowls than Rodgers. And you cannot compare the talent of Eli Manning or Ben Roethlisberger or Troy Aikman to the talent of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is supremely talented. So I believe that Rodgers can sit at any and just about every table outside of, if there's just 4 sitting down, Peyton, Montana, Brady, Mahomes, they can sit. But outside of that, Rodgers going to get him a seat, Dave Helman.
Let's also address the elephant in the room, and it's unfortunate. And James, I know he's your guy. I really feel like the narrative about Aaron Rodgers is changing in front of our eyes because he's been a grating, annoying personality for the better part of 5 years at this point. I mean, you go back to 2020, that's when Aaron Rodgers started to be in so many conversations that weren't about football. Yeah. Like, I don't want to hear about immunization. I don't want to hear about whether he's running for vice president or darkness retreats or Dr. Fauci. I think I covered all of it. Like, people are tired of hearing about that stuff, I would guess, because I know I am. You can be annoyed and tired of hearing all of that without dragging Aaron Rodgers' football resume through the mud, because it is absolutely incredible. And I agree with everything y'all just said. I think Super Bowls are important if you're determining the absolute greatest. I'm not going to argue that with you. But this is a team game. You can't put team accolades all on one guy, even if it's somebody as important as a quarterback. You look at Aaron Rodgers, 4 MVPs. Only one guy has done better than that.
That's it, Peyton.
The absolute, the totality of what he has done, the wins, the stats, just, I hate to say eye test, but just watch Aaron Rodgers play football in his prime. I don't think any quarterback has ever played the position better than him when he was doing it at his absolute best. I know the team results aren't there. Are we going to hold that against Aaron Rodgers because the Packers couldn't field an onside kick a decade ago? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And on the flip side, it's crazy how time helps us reshape these narratives, because we talked about this in the pre-show meeting. Peyton Manning threw for 140 yards and no touchdowns in his second Super Bowl. With all due respect to him, a sorry final season by all-time great standards. 9 touchdown passes and 17 picks in the year that the Denver Broncos won that Super Bowl. Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, Chris Harris Jr., Malik Jackson. That's why the Broncos won that. But Peyton Manning gets to sit at this proverbial multiple ring table. Because of that, it's not fair. It's not any more fair than Aaron Rodgers being left out because the Packers had some brutal misses in the playoffs, some of which were his fault, at least one of which definitively was not his fault. He's one of the 5 or 6 best to ever do it. And like I said, I think some people don't want to admit that now because we want to hear less from him, but you can't deny the facts.
I totally agree. I think what Mark Schlereth said was insane. I mean, because the eye test for me with Aaron Rodgers is he's one of the greatest ever. But I also would look at Dan Marino, who never won a Super Bowl. I look at Drew Brees, who won a Super Bowl, never won an MVP. And then I look at Aaron Rodgers. To me, he's better than both of those guys. Those guys, not all-time greats. So he wins the Super Bowl. He wins 4 MVPs, wins Super Bowl MVP. What else would he have what else does he need to do? So, like what Dave said, people get, maybe they don't want to hear from Aaron Rodgers from an opinionist standpoint. Don't let that change the fact that he is one of the greatest ever. And not only that, he's the most gifted thrower of the football I've ever seen. I think the only guy who can come close is Mahomes in terms of the natural gift. So, listen, I think Aaron Rodgers, whatever 4-seater, 5-seater table you want to put him at works for me. I just think it's a crazy thing to say. And Mark Schlereth won 3 Super Bowls. A lot of respect for him and what he did as a player, but I totally disagree with this.
Dave, let me ask you, because you started your career as a beat writer, journalist, all the things. So the person sitting to my left of Dave Helman, you are one of the hidden figures that actually shape the narratives of sports. Right? Like the athletes, they do what they do on the field, but at the end of the day, you all are.
Yeah,
like the articles that people are reading are written by men like you. They're written by women like you,
and MVP votes. And
it's all about that. Like you shape the narrative, the legacies of so many athletes. So how can someone like you, who is shaping the narrative of Aaron Rodgers going forward, how hard is it to differentiate Aaron Rodgers, the person, and the darkness retreats, and the COVID ideologies, and the I've been immunized, and the UFOs, and the Dr. Fauci? How do you separate that when assessing and when writing your articles, or do you struggle with it with other quarterbacks or other players?
I mean, I think it's human nature to weigh all of that stuff, but I think that's part of the job, and hopefully I'm doing a good job of it because I'm sitting up here telling America that you should respect what Aaron Rodgers has done. I think so highly of him as a quarterback. That's part of the job of a journalist, is to be able to think objectively, separate those things. I have no problem saying I think Aaron Rodgers has acted like an ass for most of the last 5 years. It does not change my opinion of what I have seen him do on a football field. Like I said, at his best, you can put guys up there with him. I don't think there's a quarterback that's ever done it definitively better than him when he was at his absolute best. And I mean, if you're doing your job the right way, you can differentiate those things and say, definitely don't agree with everything that comes out of this guy's mouth, but my God, can he throw a football?
Can I ask y'all a question? Because I truly believe that those 4 people at the table that you said, the Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes, I truly believe if they seen Aaron walk in there, hold on, ain't enough seats. Hey, bring another one. I truly believe they'll say that. But why at the quarterback spot when we ranking these quarterbacks, do we forget about talent? Like, because I feel like I feel like a lot of these lists that people make, they only think about Super Bowl. You don't even remember the talent. And at the quarterback spot, that's really the only position it happens at.
Yeah.
It don't happen at the running back.
Yep.
It don't happen at the receiver. When nobody fixed their lips to say Terrell Owens can't come sit at no table. When nobody fixed their lips to say Randy Moss can't come sit at no table because he ain't got no Super Bowl rings. Because we seen the talent that they have, right?
True.
So why is it only at the quarterback spot to where we are so locked in to the Super Bowl rings?
For me, I fervently believe winning and losing is a quarterback stat. There are some people who do not believe that. I fervently believe it.
I don't believe that.
Right? And the reason I fervently believe it is because in my playing experience, both collegiately, I had the all-time winningest quarterback and a guy named Colt McCoy, and we won a lot of games. And when Colt got hurt, we had the number 3 defense in the nation my junior year, and we went 5-7. Nothing changed. Number 3 defense in the nation, went 5-7. I go to the NFL, quarterbacks are hurt, don't have a quarterback, you don't win. I could ask y'all, hey, who do y'all think are the best teams in football this year, most competitive? And regardless of the defense, the offense, y'all would end up listing the teams with the best quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So winning and losing, by my interpretation, is a quarterback stat. That's why James Jones, for me, I do look at winning and say, I'm giving that to the quarterback because you touch the ball every single play.
But that is my next thing. We talk about Aaron Rodgers because of one Super Bowl like he doesn't
Have
win.
one, correct.
You know, like, dude is in the playoffs every year when he starts, dang near, right? Every single year. Dude has won a Super Bowl. So we talk about him when we talk about these greats like he does not win. Yes, he may not have won as much as them dudes, but he has won, is what I'm saying.
It almost becomes the LeBron-MJ argument in some sense, where MJ's 6-0 in the finals, and do we hold it against LeBron that he went to all these finals in a row, but he didn't win them? You know, people do that. Yeah. Would you rather have him lost in the conference final? Would you rather have him not made the playoffs? I mean, if you look at Aaron's last 3 years when he's healthy, 13 wins, 8 wins, 2 MVPs at 38 and 39 years old. I don't know what else you're asking him to do with deficient rosters. I mean, with respect to the Packers, those rosters the last couple of years were not very good. They weren't championship caliber rosters. So I think James, what's the all-time worst you're willing to put him? Like, if just objectively. Is he the
all-time worst? I think 7th.
Seventh seems low.
I was going to say 6.
Say 5th or 6.
Yeah.
All-time worst.
So you're saying Montana,
if you
Brady, Peyton Manning, Mahomes.
Then you could throw Elway if somebody wanted to, because multiple Super Bowls and I think MVPs. So all-time worst. So that gets you to 5. Now
He said all-time worst, and he's still mad about
I'm like,
it.
all-time worst.
I'm just saying, what's the absolute lowest?
What's the absolute lowest you would put him?
12 ain't jumping. He ain't out of the top 5.
Okay, so
However y'all want to slice it, dice it, serve it up, whatever.
One guy. It's not like it's crazy.
But out of the top 5 is crazy for 12.
Okay.
At worst.
At worst.
All right, so 5th, 7th, 5th or 6th?
5th or 6th, yeah.
Okay, so objectively, I mean, to your point about the Thanksgiving table, I don't know who has a 4-person Thanksgiving with.
Exactly.
But that means that we're all saying that he's at worst the 7th greatest quarterback of all time. So that's not generational. That's lifetime. I always say Dwayne Wade was a generational player, generational shooting guard. Michael Jordan was a once-in-a-lifetime player. You know, I think with respect to some of these great quarterbacks, we're talking about Drew Brees, maybe a Marino. Those guys are generational players. Aaron Rodgers is a once-in-a-lifetime player.
Now, I will say, though, because as much as I love Rodgers, and y'all know, second to James Jones, and really, as far as non-Rodgers teammates who love Rodgers, I do. But Super Bowls do matter to me. Like, even Marino, the reason I can't put Marino, though Marino is an arm talent perspective, especially if you're talking exclusively in the pocket, probably the best thrower of the football. As soon as you bring in mobility, that's when I go Rodgers, that's when I go Mahomes. But Marino didn't win one, and he only went to one in his second year ever. That's where I'm like, sorry, I can't hear Marino arguments.
Go ahead.
But okay, actually, I get your point. It is important, but again, that's where the nuance comes into play. I already brought up Peyton, so I won't do it again. But if you had eyes, you know that Peyton Manning's not why they won that. Even another great example is his brother.
Can I counter you?
Eli Manning, definitively, he's got those 2 rings that he can always hold over everybody. He was never at any point in his career as good at quarterback as Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, but let me counter you. What I would counter you is that, like, the more lotto tickets you buy, the better chance you have at winning. Right? So if I buy more lotto tickets than Schultz, I got a better shot at winning. Peyton Manning kept buying tickets. He kept buying tickets. The Denver Broncos, every year he was in Denver, they were close. They were close. Remember, they went to the Super Bowl, got the brakes beat off of them by the Seahawks, but you still bought a ticket. Then you go to the Super Bowl again, and then you beat who they beat, Dave? Who they beat? Panthers.
They beat the Panthers.
But you still bought a ticket. To me, the problem with Rodgers, unfortunately, he just hasn't bought a ton of Super Bowl tickets.
the only
Now,
thing-
gotten to the playoffs, but he ain't bought a bunch of Super Bowl tickets.
That's not even fair because, and I get it, most of them didn't go their way. But James, how many NFC title games did the Packers play in during?
A lot.
6.
A lot.
It was at least 4, if not. I mean, 14, 16, 20.
Yep.
When they lost to Tampa Bay, like they were so close.
can I ask you
so
this?
many times?
It's crazy, though, because we bring up talent when we feel like we need to bring up talent for our argument. Because it is some quarterbacks that have Super Bowl rings that are not good.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? And then that's when we want to say, but Aaron was way more talented than him. You know what I'm saying? Like now
you get against them.
Yeah, now we want to bring in talent. Like when we talk to Joe Flacco's and the Trent Dilferts and all that got these Super Bowl rings over Joe Montana. Over Dan Marino. Now we want to bring in talent.
But here's why, to me, it matters. And again, biased because I played for the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is my former roommate, Nick Foles. When I think about Flacco, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions in the playoffs. So I can't forget that. But when I think about, real quick, James, and I'm done with it, when I think about Eli Manning, if I'm not mistaken, Andy, help me off camera, please. I think in his 2 Super Bowl runs, he had like 12 touchdowns or 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So though Eli was not a dude during the regular season, and Flacco was not a dude during the regular season, 11 touchdowns, no picks. If Rodgers does that in the playoffs, blouses.
But what I'm saying
Rodgers did do that in the
what you
playoffs
just
once.
said right now, you're not taking them 2 quarterbacks over Dan Marino. For the greatest.
But in the playoffs, you could have a conversation. At the point in which Eli Manning has 15 touchdowns and 2 picks in the playoffs, you taking that over just about any and everybody.
But we talking about can't sit at the table.
Yeah, sure.
These boys, even with all them playoff stats and all that, is not sitting down before Dan Marino, is what I'm saying, because we've seen Dan Marino, the talent and all that, and how good Dan Marino was. That's why I'm saying this stuff is crazy. Aaron Rodgers' defense is, in his losses in the playoffs,
Terrible.
33 points, man.
Terrible.
Horrendous.
Terrible.
But we want to blame 12 for that, because wins and losses is a quarterback stat.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.